I know what you're thinking. It's a pretty good looking tash. Well, it's obviously Movember, which is why I'm growing this dirty tash. But that's not what we're talking about today. I want to talk to you and give you a little bit of more insight into the Royal Marines, into the military, and what you can expect. So this video is called 5 Things You Didn't Know About the Military. This channel is all about helping the next generation of soldiers, firefighters, law enforcement to get ready for their chosen roles and jobs. We offer preparation weekends, one-to-one training and online fitness programs as well. So check that out in the description. Number 1, you are going to change drastically in basic training. One of the things that the military want to do within recruit training is actually take you from being a civilian to a functioning soldier who's going to listen to orders, who's going to think differently, who's going to act differently, who's going to dress the part, feel the part, look the part and act the part. There's a big process that goes into getting you from your civilian state into your military state. You won't really realise at the time that this is happening to you because you're surrounded by others who are going through the same process. It's only when you go home on holiday on your leave periods that you'll start realising you're completely different to how you were before. You'll find your friends boring, you'll find the pub boring or the activities you did before quite boring. And you'll actually be looking forward to getting back and seeing the lads. This is hugely beneficial from the military's point of view because if they can get you established in their culture, then it means that established culture that they've had for hundreds of years can continue through you. A side note on this though, it does make leaving potentially very hard because as you go back out in Civvy Street, you're a completely different person to who you were before. So bear that in mind. And one thing I would say to combat that is to make sure that you still keep elements of your civilian life going whilst you're in the military. Number 2, the things that you thought were going to be the hardest about training are not the hardest. So for instance, from the Royal Marines, we think about the 4 Commando tests at the end of training, the Tarzan, the Endurance, the 9-mile speed march and the 30 miler. You look at those and you go, wow, that's going to be nails. But actually it's not those things that are the hardest. It's the nights of admin, staying up till 3, 4 in the morning, sometimes not getting sleep at all, for inspections at 5 a.m, for your whole locker to be thrown out in front of you and all your work that you've done throughout the night to be undone. And then trying to function the rest of the day, trying to learn, taking information and still function at a top level whilst doing phys, whilst keeping those standards. That's the hardest bit. Then obviously you're going out into exercises for 3, 4, 5 days at a time. You're pee wet through, cold, sleep deprived, and you've got to map read, you've got to be good on the tactical side of things. It's all that piled on top of you with the pressure of not being able to put your foot wrong, so to speak, that is the hardest part about training. For me, one of the hardest things was wet and dry when I first got used to it. You know, going through winter, recruit troop, you're on Dartmoor and it's -10, -15 with wind chill and you're getting your frozen trousers back on at 3 in the morning to start your working day. That's the stuff that really does take it out of you and starts making you question your career choices. However, you just stick with it and you'll get through it eventually. Number 3, a misconception out in Civvy Street is that you get selected to go into Special Forces selection. That's not true. You put yourself forward for it. If I'm a Royal Marines Commando and I want to join the SBS, I would put myself forward for selection. I don't get chosen to go on selection. The SBS aren't going through Commando units picking out the best lads. That's not how it works. So you have to put yourself forward. You obviously have to get the okay from your hierarchy or your line managers, and then you start the process and your training, and that's when you go on selection. I personally have never done it. I've got lots of friends who have, and that is the way it works. Number 4, the differences between regulars and reservists. This is something I only started to learn when I left full-time and went into the reserves. Before I joined the reserves, I didn't have tons of sort of knowledge or respect, so to speak, for the reserves, if I'm completely honest. We always thought that they're just sort of on the side and didn't really do the stuff that we were doing as full-time soldiers. But since going in, I realised that there's quite a lot of differences that make both sides as hard as each other. So number 1, for instance, as a reservist, you've got a full-time job potentially, or you're in full-time education, but then you've also got to keep up that elite fitness, go and pass all the same tests that the regular lads do, but you've got the added pressures of another job. And so, for instance, there's a guy who was in the reserves when I first joined, who was a brain surgeon. So imagine, you know, you're in surgery all week, you've saved a couple of people's lives, and then you've got to go and do your rope climbs and get all that in, revise all your tactical knowledge and that, and then on the weekend you're in a muddy field. You know, so it might not be comparable in terms of the stress that you're in constantly in that environment as a regular, but the reserves definitely has its challenges as well. Number 5, people from the outside of the military think that when you're in there it's just shouting and being pinned up against the wall and ordered to march everywhere. Once you pass out of recruit training, it's quite a chilled atmosphere. I can't speak for other regiments, but within the Royal Marines, it's big boy rules. You know, you're not walking around the unit fearful of your hierarchy shouting at you and thrashing you and all that good stuff. If Royal Marines life was like recruit training, no one would stay because it would be horrendous. But once you've proved yourself as a tangible elite soldier through Royal Marines training, and you go to a unit, yeah, you're going to have a little bit of sprog routine, and you're going to, obviously you're the new lads, so you've got to prove yourself and all that stuff. But you're not going to be, it's not recruit lifestyle. So bear that in mind. You're not going to be shouted at and screamed at your whole career. You know, it doesn't work like that. If you want to come and test yourself on one of our weekends, put yourself to your limits with like-minded people and learn new skills, then check out the description below to see how you can join us.